Are you interested in some spicy new deck tech? Well, here's your host, Capital G!
And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be bringing justice to Kotori, the pilot Prodigy. Love the concept of an Azorius Viecles commander, something new for the white and blue brand. However, we took one look at the precon and they were done dirty. So let's see if we can fix that to the best of our ability today. But before we dive into the deck, of course, always like and subscribe if you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel. And also come join the Discord group, Dungeons and Cardboard. You get to meet all sorts of cool people, such as Lunchbox, who helped make that intro. Lots of other cool players and content creators, such as Original Caesar, Bulldog, and many, many more. So come check us out. Free to join and free to play. Got our Magic, Dungeons & Dragons, Flesh and Blood. We've even got a Destiny thread that just opened up, so be sure to check that out. And now to Kotori. Obviously, Azorius Viecles is the theme, a 2/4 for this Moonfolk pilot. All vehicles you control have crew too, so as long as you're tapping minimum 2 power worth of creatures or more to crew a vehicle, said vehicle, which is a non-creature artifact, becomes an artifact creature with the printed power and toughness. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, target artifact creature you control gains lifelink and vigilance until end of turn. So you don't actually have to go on the vehicle theme. You can just go artifact creature tribal and take advantage of that lifelink and vigilance. Obviously, because it's a pilot, we are going to go with the vehicle theme here today. So let us dive in. So my deck building challenge was to keep all of the new cards from the deck in here, and then anything else that needed to be changed out got swapped out. So all 15 new cards, Kotori being one of them. We're going to go through the other creatures, such as the Research Thief. 3/3 with flash and flying, and whenever an artifact creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Pretty sweet. Got Katsumasa, the Animator. 4 mana for this 3/3 Moonfolk Artificer with flying. And you can pay a blue and 2 to have a non-creature artifact you control become an artifact creature and gain flying. If it's not already a vehicle, it has base power and toughness 1/1 until the end of the turn. Also, at the beginning of your upkeep, you can put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 3 target non-creature artifacts. So you can throw those 1/1 counters on there as long as they're not removed somehow. Once you animate them, they're bigger. I do like that. It's a little slow, though. The Kappa Cannoncer, 6 mana for this 4/4, has Improvise, so we can tap our vehicles if we're not going to be swinging with them in order to cast this. Has Ward 4, very difficult to target and remove. And whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, this gets a +1/+1 counter, and it cannot be blocked this turn. I like it better in decks that can, spam the hell out of artifacts, because it says any type of artifact. It can be a token. So if you're generating a bunch of treasures or clues, for example. So this can get real big in a hurry. The Iron Soul Enforcer, an artifact creature, human samurai. 5 mana for this 4/4 that whenever this or your commander attacks alone, return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Ideally, our commander will not be attacking, but this could swing. 4/4 is pretty beefy. The Drumbellower, a slightly worse but more efficiently costed Seedborn Muse. It's a 2/1 with flying, and untap all creatures you control during each of the player's untap step. So giving your whole team pseudo-vigilance, basically. And the Cyberdrive Awakener. 6 mana for this 4/4 flying. Other artifact creatures you control have flying, which is pretty sweet. And when this enters the battlefield, until end of turn, each non-creature artifact you control becomes a 4/4. So I spiced up the lands a little bit to take full advantage of this. You'll see what I mean shortly. 3 other artifacts, including the Aerial Surveyor, a new vehicle, white, and 2 for this 3/4 vehicle. It's not a creature unless it's crewed. And whenever this attacks, if the defending player controls more lands than you, we get to search our library for basic planes, put it onto the battlefield. And only 2 to crew, which is pretty efficient. The Imposter Mech. This can enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature an opponent controls, except as a vehicle with crew 3. So copy our opponent's best thing, and if they've got any sort of static abilities that we can take advantage of, even better, because then we can copy the abilities and never have to crew this thing. And of course, the alternate commander for the deck, which is Shorikai Genesis Engine. Blue, white, and 2 for this 8/8 vehicle. It's a legendary vehicle. It's 1 tap, draw 2 cards, then discard a card, which is super efficient. That is amazing. And if that wasn't enough, we also get a 1/1 colorless pilot token. With this, when this creature crews vehicles, treat it as though its power were 2 greater. So these 1/1s can crew a vehicle that requires a crew cost of 3 on their own. It's also crew 8 to turn this into a creature. But with our commander, it's going to be crew 2, so it'll be super efficient. This can be your commander, and this is arguably the more powerful of the 2 commanders in these colors in this deck. However, I decided to stick with Kotori for purposes of justice, but if someone decides to switch it out for Shorikai, you can go do all sorts of, say, artifact recursion shenanigans with that build. So be on the lookout for Shorikai, because this is definitely going to be the more popular of the 2 in the long run. One new enchantment, and this is one that's generated a lot of buzz: Swift Reconfiguration. A 1 mana aura with flash that can enchant a creature or a vehicle. Enchanted permanent is a vehicle artifact with crew 5 and loses all other card types. So, lots to unpack here. One is that if you don't want your thing to be a creature because creatures are being wiped off the board all the time, you can throw this on a creature that you control and keep it away from those creature board wipes. Crew 5, well, if our commander, whatever, if we do this in one of our things, it's still going to be crew 2. If we throw this onto one of our opponent's things, that's where it gets a little sketch. Like, what of our opponents are we going to enchant, honestly? Shuyun, for example. If we enchant this, if we throw this onto a Shuyun, well, yeah, people will find a way to crew it and still turn sideways. Shuyun and some of the more dedicated Voltron commanders might be vulnerable to this. But if someone's playing Go Wide, or if they're playing a commander that's got a ton of cool abilities, then I don't see this being super effective. We'll have to wait and see. The cards are only coming out, I think today is pre-release day. Pre-release weekend has begun. So let's see how this performs. I'm still a little sketch on it at this point, but we will see. A couple of instants, including a 5 mana counterspell. Why are we doing this? Called Access Denied. I love the name, by the way. Counter target spell, create X Thopter tokens with flying, where X is that spell's mana value. Someone wants to go big with the spell, boom, instant army in a can. Alternatively, we have Release to Memory, 4 mana instant, exile target opponent's graveyard, and for each creature card exiled this way, create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. So again, army in a can, helps us crew more vehicles, so why not? Let's keep that in here. Some sorceries with Organic Extinction. This is a good one. White, and 8 with Improvise, so we can tap our artifacts to reduce the cost. And destroy all non-artifact creatures. So that can be very one-sided depending on who else we're playing with. Our last of the new cards is Universal Surveillance. Triple blue and X with Improvise. Draw X cards. There's nothing else to really talk about with that card. So those are all the new cards. I decided to keep all 15 of the new cards, Commander included, in the deck. But let's see how I shaped the rest of it. Obviously, being a vehicle deck, we're going to start with our artifacts. So other vehicles, ramp, and other cool toys to play with. So Aradar Express, of course, an 8/6 of Menace, crew 4. Ignore whatever the crew cost is printed on it, because it's always going to be crew 2 with our commander. Arcane Signet for the ramp. Azorius Signet again for the ramp. Bromat Bazaar Barge. It's a 5/5 with crew 2. Well, it says crew 3, but the key thing here is when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Colossal Plow, which does come with the deck. I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep this one. I've never been a huge fan of this card because of the 3 toughness, but everything else about it is really, really good, including the low mana cost. This can actually come down on turn 2 and then our commander on turn 3, and we swing and take full advantage. This, of course, is a 6/3 when it's accrued, and when it attacks, we get to add triple white to our mana pool, and we gain 3 life. Conjurer's Closet. Blink some of our creatures so we can, even our vehicle creatures, so we can, use them again on defense. Consulate Dreadnought. How was this not in the original deck? 1 mana for a 7/11 vehicle. It says crew 6, crew 2 because of our commander. This comes down on turn 1. Our commander turn comes down a little bit later, and we start swinging with this thing. Cultivator's Caravan. Double duty. It's a 5/5 and it's a mana rock. Demolition Stomper, a 10/7. Yes, it's 6 mana, a little bit later in the game. But it cannot be blocked by creatures of power 2 or less, so anyone that wants to block it has to throw something significant in front of it. Rocking the Dermotaxi. So, when this enters the battlefield, we get to exile a creature card from any graveyard. And we get to tap 2 untapped creatures, or we can tap our commander, because our commander will give it crew 2. Until end of turn, this becomes a copy of the imprinted card, except it's a vehicle in addition to its other types. Felwar Stone, again for the ramp. Imperial Recovery Unit. When this attacks, return target creature or vehicle card with mana value 2 or less from our graveyard to our hand. So we could get a little bit of value off of this. Liquid Metal Torque. Taps for a colorless. Tap, target non-land permanent becomes an artifact, or a target... Yep, non-land permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types. So, especially if we're casting our big board wipe, we can turn one of our non-artifact creatures, such as our commander, into an artifact to protect it from that effect. Mobilizer Mech. 3/4 with flying, pretty cheap to crew, and when it becomes crewed, up to one other target vehicle we control also becomes an artifact creature. Pretty sweet. The Moonsnare Prototype. Funky little common from Neon Dynasty. 1 blue for this artifact. Tap this and an untapped artifact or creature we control to add an additional colorless mana. So all of a sudden this basically says we can use one of our other artifacts or one of our other creatures to get more mana. Great in the early game. Later in the game when we don't need this, we can channel it, paying a blue and 4, discard this, and target another non-land permanent. Its owner decides to put it on top or on the bottom of their library. Network Terminal. Taps for mana of any color. We can tap this and another untapped artifact we control to draw and discard a card. The Perelian 2. This is the dream. Crew this thing and get a bunch of angels. Peacewalker Colossus. This is fantastic. 3 mana for a 6/6 vehicle. And has the activated ability of white 1. Another target vehicle we control becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Note that this does not have to be a creature for us to be able to activate it. We can use it whenever we want, just not on itself. A new vehicle, Prodigy's Prototype. White, blue, and 1 for this 3/4. Whenever one or more vehicles we control attack, we get a pilot token. Reckoner Bankbuster, good way to draw some cards. 2 mana for this 4/4 vehicle. Comes in with 3 charge counters on it. And we can pay 2 tap and remove a charge counter to draw a card. So if we're not swinging, we're drawing cards for this thing. Pretty sweet. Yes, we can only draw 3. There's a ceiling on how many cards we can draw, but that's fine. Because ideally, like, even when we're done drawing cards with this, we're swinging with it. The Sky Sovereign. Fantastic vehicle. 5 mana for the 6/5 flying. When this enters the battlefield or attacks, deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. So, shoots down some of the smaller creatures along the way. Soul Ring, because lots of colorless mana is good. Search Hacker Mech. 4 mana for this 5/5 with Menace. That's pretty cool. And when it enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to twice the number of vehicles we control to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Sweet. Talisman of Progress for the Mana Rock. Thundersteel Colossus, bit of a top ender here. 7 mana for a 7/7 Trample and Haste. We still need to crew it, but it's super easy to crew, even it doesn't matter if we have our commander or not. Trading post to take advantage of our artifact synergies here. We can discard a card, gain 4 life. We can pay a life to make a goat. We can sack a creature to return an artifact from our graveyard to our hand, or we can sacrifice an artifact to draw a card. Nice little toolbox. Weatherlight. Lots of artifacts. We've got some legendary creatures, so let's go find some historic cards now, shall we? And lastly, the Well of Lost Dreams. This is here specifically to take advantage of the life link trigger on our commander. As we can give one of our vehicles lifelink, swing with it, gain a bunch of life, dump the mana into Well of Lost Dreams to get a bunch of cards. On to other creatures. Bronze Guardian is an obvious include. It's star 5 double strike, star being the number of artifacts we control. Has Ward 2, gives all our other artifacts Ward 2. And yeah, it's just a sweet card here. This is likely not crewing vehicles, but taking advantage of the fact that they're around to, swing in heavy on our opponents. Etherium Sculptor for the mana cost reduction to our artifacts. Foundry Inspector, same deal. The Hotshot Mechanic. It crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater, and it's a 2/1 for 1. Savannah Lions with upside, and it's a Fox Pilot. Use the boost to get through. That's all I have to say about that. Indomitable Archangel. White, and 2 for this 4/4. I believe this one's in the deck, actually. Has flying and Middlecraft. Artifacts you control have Shroud as long as you control 3 or more artifacts. Pretty sweet. We wanted to defend our board. Metalwork Colossus. When our vehicles and our creatures, this makes this super cheap to cast, and it's just a big old 10/10. It also gives us a sack outlet once this is in our graveyard. Padim, Console of Innovation. Artifacts we control have hexproof. Again, another way to protect our board. And at the beginning of our upkeep, if we control the artifact with the highest converted mana cost, or tied for the highest converted mana cost, we get to draw a card. So, protect our board. Summon Sentinel card draw. We'll take it. Wrath Capuchin, Ship's Mage. We may cast historic spells as though they had flash. This comes in the deck, and this is actually a pretty good include. I like it here. One thing that they did not toss in was Rebec, Architect of Ascension. 3/4, Human Artificer. I always seem to find a place for her. Artifacts we control have protection from each converted mana cost amongst artifacts we control. So if we have, say, a 0-cost artifact, artifact tokens can't block our stuff. If we have a 2-mana artifact in play, disenchant and naturalize no longer target our things. So on and so forth. It is really, really cool to have that. Riddlesmith. Whenever we cast an artifact spell, we may draw, then discard a card. Sky Swimmer Koi, new one from Neon Dynasty, and one that I think did not actually make my video when I did the review set, but this is in fact a fantastic card. I just ran out of room for it. 4 mana for this 3/3 flying fish, and whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under our control, we may draw, then discard a card. It's on ETB, that's really cool. The Solemn Simulacrum, of course, go get a basic, and when it dies, draw a card. We all know it quite well. SRAM, Senior Edificer, another great ad, already in the pre-con. Whenever we cast an aura, equipment, or most importantly, a vehicle spell, we get to draw a card. Thought Monitor, affinity for artifacts, flying 2/2, enters the battlefield, draws us some cards. And Vedalken Engineer, great little mana dork here. Tap to add 2 mana of any one color to our mana pool, spend it only to cast artifact spells, or activate abilities of artifacts. That's fine, we have a lot of artifact spells. Adding in only one enchantment spell though, and that's Teleportation Circle. At the beginning of our end step, we get to exile an artifact or a creature we control, then put it right back onto the battlefield. We've got some pretty cool ETBs on our creatures and our artifacts. This will help us recycle them. Some instants. Armed and Armored is here. If we got 4 or 5 vehicles on the board, somebody just board wiped. Surprise! Rocking the Blacksmith Skill. This is one of those workhorse cards that always catch people off guard. I know that YouTube channel Nitpicking Nerds hates on this card, but I've seen this swing games. What it does, of course, 1 white mana, target permanent gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. And if it happens to be an artifact creature, it also gets +2/+2. So absolutely amazing. Green has a version of this now called it was Tamio something or other for 1 green, which is going to see a lot of play as well. So watch out for it. Crush Contraband comes with the deck. Good choice. Exiles both an artifact and an enchantment. We're going to be seeing a lot of both in the coming months. Dispatch, great removal spell. 1 white to tap down a creature. We're gonna have a ton of artifacts. If we control 3 or more artifacts, exile that creature. Generous Gift destroys a permanent. They get an elephant. We don't care. And Swords to Plowshares to exile a creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. One other sorcery I added was a single combat. White, and 3. Each player chooses a creature or planeswalker they control, then sacrifices the rest. Players cannot cast creature or planeswalker spells to the end of our next turn, so us included. We have to wait until the end of our following turn in order to cast more creatures. But we're running a Viecles deck. We only need 1 creature out. Just saying. We're fine. Over to our lands. Added in a whole bunch because the mana base was pretty weak with 30 basics. So obviously we've reduced the number of basics and really fleshed out our mana. So here we go, starting with the Adarkar Wastes, the Pain land that taps for our colorless when we don't need the color. Deals us the damage if we do. That's fine with us. Ancient Den for those artifact synergies. The Azorius Chancery, because we've got a couple cards that take advantage of us having less lands in play than our opponents. So the bounce land helps a little bit with that. Command Tower. Deserted Beach coming in from Midnight Hunt. As long as we control 2 or more other lands, this comes onto the battlefield untapped. Running, of course, the new legendary cycle of lands, so Ijanjo, Seat of the Empire. Comes into play untapped, taps for white, and if it happens to be a little later in the game, we can pay 3 mana, discard it, deal 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. Might be cheaper if we have legendary creatures on the battlefield. Exotic Orchard for the ramp. Field of the Dead, we want more pilots, and we've really diversified the mana base here, so let's get some zombies. Nice little plan B. Glacial Fortress enters the battlefield tapped unless we already have a plains or an island. Guildless Commons, another bounce land. In this case it taps for double colorless, but that's totally fine with us. The Hallowed Fountain, and this is the printing from the upcoming Infinity set. I've got thoughts about Infinity. We'll go into that another time, but I do like the art for this card. This is amazing. 3 regular islands. 1 Mech Hangar. Taps for colorless. Or we can tap for a colored mana, cast pilot or vehicle spells. Or we can pay 3 into this, tap it, and a vehicle becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. So lots of utility for us here. Rocking the Mutavault. Why? Because we can turn this into a creature and crew most of our vehicles with it. Ottawa, Soaring City. Taps for a blue, comes into play untapped. We can always channel it to return an artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand. Cool little activated ability in the late game. 3 plains. 1 Port Town. When it enters the battlefield, we may reveal a plains or island card from our hand. Otherwise, it enters the battlefield tapped. Still a good dual land. Prairie Stream enters the battlefield tapped unless we control 2 or more basics. With how many non-basics I've thrown into the deck, this might be a placeholder for something else. The Razortide Bridge, indestructible artifact land. Sea Chrome Coast enters the battlefield tapped unless we control 2 or fewer other lands, so this is great in the early game. Seat of the Synod. Sky Cloud Expanse. Pay 1 mana into it, get 2. 3 snow-covered islands and 3 snow-covered plains. The reason we have some snow-covered and some not is specifically because of the Field of the Dead. In order to get more zombies and have a better chance of having more lands with different names. Spire of Industry, which I believe is a reprint included in the deck. Taps for a colorless, or we can tap, pay a life, add 1 mana of any color that we can only use if we control an artifact. Fantastic card. And the Scryland Temple of Enlightenment rounds out the build. And that is Kotori done justice. Now, on the deck, of course, can be further improved. Some of the new cards, I took the challenge of keeping all the new cards in the deck, but there are some that I would have liked to swap out. But we kept them all in here and made the best of what we've got. So what are your suggestions for Kotori, by the way? We would definitely love to see that in the comments section. Oh, and on that topic, we're still looking for questions for the Q&A video, which I'd like to do sometime soon. I've got a few to get started, but ask me whatever. Nothing is off the table as long as it's not overtly political. That's really the only rule. Don't be overtly political, but everything else is fair game. So, comment on the deck below. Comment with your Q&A questions below. And we will see you all again next time. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy pre-release.